Greetings, everyone. Welcome back to Crypto Crayfish. Holt here. Excited to do a little bit of a market update with you guys. I'm going to keep it decently brief, somewhere around 15-20 minutes. So it shouldn't be too long a video, but I think this week has been crazy enough that we need to have some conversations. Take a look at this wonderful image I've created of Fed Jerome Powell canceling alt season, hitting the panic button for a ton of traditional investors on the stock side, as well as a ton of crypto. We'll talk about this today and stick around to the end to find out how it affected my portfolio this week. Hint, hint, I lost 45K this week. So how are we dealing with that psychologically? How do we bounce back? How do we move on going forward? How's the conviction? How are things actually looking? Stick around and find out. All right, y'all. So if you'll remember, about 2 weeks ago, we did a video whether altcoin season was starting or not, and we went through a bunch of different metrics. I've listed them here, and those are really helpful in determining, is it altcoin season based on a lot of these metrics and based on the idea that what we've seen in past altcoin seasons or not. And so there's a ton of conversation, a lot of people discussing whether, if a little update, if you weren't paying too much attention to traditional markets, Fed Jerome Powell this week, they had a meeting where essentially he announced the Fed's decision to lower interest rates by a 0.25% cut. That was completely expected and in line, but what really got the markets going to the downside was an announcement that there would be far less cuts factored in for next year. So rather than 3 expected, they set out a forecast for 1 cut. So that is essentially why you saw that huge major liquidation spike on Wednesday of this week, the 18th. You saw, the Russell lose almost 5% in a day. You saw Bitcoin back under 100K. You saw Ethereum in the 2 days after go all the way down to 3,100 again. Some pretty bearish price action that was pretty sudden and a lot of people really didn't expect. So we'll talk about that. A lot of people are talking about whether altcoin season is canceled, whether we're in a failed cycle, all these types of things. Let me just start by answering that right now. We are not in a failed cycle, guys, at least at this point. We will continue to monitor it. But if you are in crypto and, Ethereum, I believe, got a 25 to 30% correction. And that's pretty routine. You need to be able to weather that. You need to be able to accept that. And that's just the way this market works. And remember, that's also the reason we're able to get huge outsized returns on the positive side. So that volatility is a good thing as long as you can turn off the short-term fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So that's what I would say. Altcoin season is not canceled. I would say it's possible it's delayed. And we will talk about that a little bit today, just based on some of the metrics. We're going to go through all of these and do a little update to that last altcoin season video, talk about what these metrics have done since. Really, during that week, which was, last week of November, first week of December, everything was looking quite bullish, and we decided we were entering altcoin season. And this meeting, this a little bit of macro data, we said, the only thing that really could kind of slow us down would be something like a black swan or something macro related. And this is, essentially the market's freaking out about the possibility of inflation and the possibility of slowing rate cuts. In the end, I think it's an overreaction. I think it's short-lived. But that, as you've seen, has taken, it's set some of the metrics back a little bit. And long-term, I'm actually pretty bullish in that because I think that we're getting a little overheated and having it, at the end of the day, we want the marathon, not the sprint. At least I do. We want that long, continued grind up, at least into the summer of next year, maybe all the way to Q4. And if we instead get a huge blow off top in January, it could really stagger the market for a while. So let's get into the metrics here, guys. We're going to start with Bitcoin dominance. We can head on over to our chart here. Let's head down to our Bitcoin dominance. So you'll see we're at 58.57 right now. And if we look at a 3-month chart, this will give you an idea of what we're really looking at. You can remember, if you watched my last video, if not, go check it out. There has been this huge kind of uptrend line that's been in play for quite a long time here, guys. And I've drawn it out, as you can see. It's been at least this whole year, just kind of bouncing along on its ascending pattern as Bitcoin dominance has gone up. You can see last time we did a video as we were breaking below this, and then we got some pretty strong rejections below the trend line, and then actually a retest and a rejection. That was where we were saying, okay, yeah, altcoin season is looking really strong. You can see in the past, few days, we've reversed that move a little bit. And we've come back above the trend line. We haven't made a new high. We'd have to get all the way up to 61.5 to do that. I think, so we hit, let's see, right around 60 again. I kind of think this is the final move upwards for Bitcoin dominance. I can't tell you the exact top. It's possible we get a new high. It's possible we get a double top. It's possible we've already topped right here in the past few days. That's just something we're going to have to watch, guys. As far as altcoin season, this to me is just proof of a little bit of a delay. It's not it being canceled, but remember, altcoin seasons happen when Bitcoin dominance gets a really strong negative print for the long term, likely heading down to around 40%. So you can see, a lot of people were saying, oh, is altcoin season over? Guys, we've run, actually, I'll take it from the top just to be generous here. From the top, we've come down 11%. All the way to 40 is going to be right around 35. So we are not even close to the end of altcoin season. And frankly, we're arguably just slowly getting into the start. Again, we're kind of hitting a pause here. And if you want to hear what I'm doing with my portfolio because of that, stick around to the end. We'll talk about it. So as far as this metric goes, it really doesn't concern me. December is always a strong month for Bitcoin, and potentially we could have one higher high, all those types of things. Again, it doesn't really worry me. Frankly, I wouldn't be shocked to see Bitcoin run to 120K by the end of December and take dominance up with it, and then start to give back market share in the new year. So this still looking, I would say, overall bullish for altcoin season, but a little bit more, going to take a little bit more time. Next, M2 money supply. All right, let's talk about it. So this one's important because, as we've talked about, liquidity really leads risk assets as a whole, and especially crypto. It's pretty speculative. So you can see we're still curling up here, still in the same place that we were a few weeks ago. Overall, it's looking bullish to me. Same exact indicator. We don't need to cover it too much more. All right, next, let's head to Ethereum BTC here. All right, this one's an important one for me, as you know, and for a lot of the channel's watchers because of Ethereum being, kind of what we think could be a really strong bet into the post-halving year coming up here. You might be wondering, we talked about how the bottom was likely in for ETH BTC when we got the first and second close above the 50-week simple moving average. I'll put it on the chart here. You can see. And now we've broken back below it. I've had people asking, is that a negative sign? Is that bearish? No, the goal was to get weekly closes above it and multiple weekly closes above it. We got that. As far as coming back below it, crypto often does this, and altcoins often will even set a double bottom before they sustainably go up against Bitcoin. So doesn't worry me at all. Frankly, this is quite a nice wick, and we've had a nice bounce. So maybe this is our version of a double bottom, or maybe there's further downside just in the short term. It really doesn't scare me as far as ETH/USD. And frankly, if it's kind of a nice gift if you were not fully invested yet to get some nice valuations for Ethereum against Bitcoin once again. So doesn't freak me out at all. As far as the altcoin season, it doesn't suggest to me that we are changing or heading away from altcoin season. If anything, this is what it always does. I can show you on a 5-year time frame. We can look at last time it did this back in 2020. You can see we got this nice, and then a full, so this was Monday, September 2nd, a full all the way to January 6th. So many, many months later is when we actually got that secondary low. Now, I think we're a little bit, more compressed for time this cycle. Ethereum took a while to really get down to its lower valuations. And so this was actually, but you can see, this was December. This was literally the week of December 23rd right here, this wick down. So we could very much just be repeating that, guys. And you can see it did go lower a few weeks later, but that was about the end of it. So just keep that in mind. I really don't think ETH BTC is looking bad here. And I think we could go all the way back down to 0.032, and it still wouldn't really worry me. If we start getting below that, that's where I'm going to start to really have some looks at it. All right, next, DXY. I'm going to be frank with you guys. This is really the only indicator of the ones that we look at that has been scaring me as far as altcoins for the medium term. So do I think altcoin season is canceled because of this? No. But I do think, the DXY breaking out, this is the value of the dollar, if you don't know that. And so as it increases, generally, capital becomes more expensive. And what that means for really speculative risk assets, i.e. altcoins, is generally they struggle. And so we talked about this 107 level. We got that strong rejection. We're looking pretty good. But we talked about, it really needs to break below 105.5, and it never did that. It bounced off it. And now we've gotten a run through 107 all the way up to like 108.5 pretty quickly. This is a little bit scary, guys. I'm going to be watching the weekly close. I hope we can get a weekly close kind of back at least below this one over here at 107.4. We have had a nice red day in the dollar today if we go to a daily chart. But you can see that, if we look at a 5-day, it had quite a big move up on that weakness of the stock market on Wednesday. So we're getting a little bit of a move down. I would like to see more. Frankly, even if it breaks out on the weekly and heads towards 110, because I think that's really the next main area on the chart. If it heads towards 110, I think we're going to just see that pause in altcoins hold off for a little bit longer. We do remember for altcoin season to really happen, we need to see the DXY roll over in a really strong way. So if you look last time, it was this move, right? This is 2020. You can see we got one final high in actually March 2020, and then it rolled over really aggressively all the way to January 2021. So that's the move we need for altcoin season. We're not quite there yet. And again, I think that's just delaying things a little bit. I'm not too worried about it long term. And in fact, PCE inflation data came in quite in line today. And so that's why you've seen the dollar sell back off. It could potentially be starting to roll over, but it's just too early to call that. Again, I think patience is key here. Remember, Ethereum tends to do quite well into the new year. It's got strong seasonality January through May. So is it something that I would want to be out of the market? No. But is it something where, as we talked about a few weeks ago, everything was flashing that it was really, really time? No, we're in a little bit more of a pause state. That's okay. That's kind of what this market tends to do, tends to throw curveballs. And that's why I'm in it for, at least kind of more of a year time frame rather than a few days or a week's time frame. All right, next one, social risk. We've talked about this one. We've talked about how retail really has to come back in waves for us to really have a strong altcoin season. You'll see, for example, last time we got really, really strong spikes and they were sustained. And here, we've had these strong spikes, but really no sustained momentum that's staying. that to me again suggests we're kind of paused on altcoin season, but I also don't think we're going to get, a huge, much further sell-off. It's always possible we get some more corrections, but look at this. We've got some decent volume. I'm still interested in the cryptoverse, so I'm not too worried for the short term. I think that this one's pretty neutral as far as it goes. All right, let's talk QE versus QT. So if you don't know, QE stands for quantitative easing. QT stands for quantitative tightening. This just means, is the Fed printing money or is it taking assets off its balance sheet? Is it reducing how much money is in circulation? Well, you'll know if you paid attention on Wednesday that actually he has chosen to drop rates, but remain in QT. So the Fed is still in QT. They're not in QE. I actually think that's a great call on the macro side. We don't want inflation to spike again, guys. That would be a huge issue for a lot of assets, including likely cryptos. So I think it's fine to remain in QT. Would we be more bullish maybe in the short term if it was QE? Sure, that free money at a cheap level really tends to do really strong things for crypto, but I also think it could kind of end up being like a nice hyper boost into the mid 2025 or whenever they start QE for those altcoins especially. So again, this one's pretty neutral to me. Macro, am I worried about the macro sphere? Do I think we're getting a black swan? I really don't. Frankly, this Wednesday, as far as the analysts I watched, it was quite in line for me. I very much expected them to lower how many rate cuts they were thinking, and I think it's a good approach to the data we've been getting that's just a little bit hot on inflation. And, they're kind of, if you don't know, the Fed has to balance this, the unemployment rate versus the inflation. And unemployment really has been looking pretty solid. We're not in huge layoffs. We're not in any of that stuff yet. And so they have some room to remain a little bit tighter for longer. And so I think this flash crash, they call it, really doesn't concern me for the long term. It's, if anything, I think more of a buying opportunity. Could we get more pullbacks, especially, say, when Trump takes office in about a month? Sure. But do I think that we're looking into the face of a recession or some major macro downturn? I really don't at this point, and I'll keep you posted on that. So overall, looking at all these different indicators and the updates, you can see it's a little bit less bullish for altcoin season right now. Do I think altcoin season is canceled like everyone's worried about? Definitely not. I think it might delay us a few weeks, might delay us a few months, but I think that's kind of the max on that one. And when I say delay us, I don't necessarily mean the altcoin market is going to sell off further. I more mean that Bitcoin is going to outperform it for a little bit longer, take some more market share, maybe go up in dominance a little bit more. So yeah, I wouldn't be selling your altcoins, at least Ethereum that's, relatively stable for the short term right now. I would just kind of be sitting and waiting and watching, and maybe starting to buy some more if you have some further liquidity still sitting on the sidelines. All right, let's just go into a final little FUD reminder here. We did a market psychology section in our last video. Go check that out if you need it and you're feeling some panic right now. But this is just a little reminder. I've got breathe in, breathe out on here. Really, when you're holding, especially if it's a lot of money for you, these types of markets can have a really strong effect on your emotions. And so managing that in whatever way you do in other areas of your life. People often think of investing as very numbers focused, very mathematic focused, not very emotional. And in fact, it's mostly the opposite. It is very much about managing those emotions, like in relationships or other things. So if you're someone who is all about the gym or needs to do something active to get out of their head, make sure you're doing those things. Same around the holidays, it can be challenging with family and all that type of stuff. Just make sure you're taking care of yourself and don't make any, quick short-term rash decisions like, oh my gosh, I need to get out ASAP. At the end of the day, if you're panicking, it's often a better decision to at least take 24 hours, take a cold shower, talk to your loved ones about it, before you actually make any money moves, because that is how you end up capitulating the bottom. All right, let's talk some of these bullets. So it is a scary time in the markets. Personally, it's been pretty scary this week. Kind of unexpected crashes. It really wasn't the reaction I was expecting out of the market as far as the Fed meeting. And I think it was looking super bullish at the beginning of the week as Bitcoin was, getting its first breakout over 100K on the weekly time frame and all these things. And now it feels like we've just been set down a peg pretty quickly. So again, just kind of take care of yourself, focus on those things. I'm focusing on the fundamentals. Even making these videos really helps me to work through some of those things. Feel free to leave in the comments below if you are having struggles or stress and want me to talk about anything in specific. All right, the impact of leverage. This one's huge, guys. Some of why you are seeing such big moves that are pretty scary, even at high market caps, is because of leverage. The stock market is one of the most over leveraged it's ever been in history right now. And this goes for crypto as well, especially with leveraged ETFs, which frankly I'm holding. So just keeping in mind that there's a lot of leverage in the market, and oftentimes what that means is when people are over leveraged, things start to go down, they get margin called, right? So they have taken out loans to buy things, and a margin call means the banks say, nope, you're losing too much value too quickly, pay us back now our loan, or we're going to liquidate your shares, essentially. And so what that means is they end up having to sell to pay back the banks. And so that can cause a huge liquidation cascade, which really I think is what we saw on Wednesday in the stock market, and then in crypto kind of that day and then the following day or two. Does that concern me? No, frankly, I think it's a bullish sign. We want some of that leverage to get removed from the markets so that it can be a little bit more of a sustainable move going forward. Again, I think something where, the market got leveraged and went up extremely aggressively all the way into January or February could potentially have consequences for the long-term integrity of this bull market year rather than lasting a full year or 6 months. It might only last a few months. So again, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to be removing some of this leverage from the market. My portfolio. So I said I would talk about this. This week I lost right around 45K. That's a pretty big amount of money. And to be honest, the ways I am dealing with or focusing on it is remembering my investment thesis, looking through the evidence like we just did today, saying, has anything really changed for why I am in Ethereum or why I believe crypto will do well over the next year? And really, it hasn't. Are we a bit more delayed? Yeah. Do I wish I maybe had a little bit more capital on the sidelines to put in at these lower prices? Sure. But you can't predict the market. You can't time the market perfectly. Hence why I DCA'd in over multiple months. It's just how it goes. And so it's not something that I'm going to overthink or worry about. And hopefully you all can kind of take solace in that sentiment as well, especially if you have a lot of money in the market compared to what you normally have. It's okay to have, a strong week down like this. And just remember, kind of why you're holding what you're holding rather than selling only based on market sentiment and on momentum. Lastly, fundamentals. As I've said, this is something that really helps me look back on why you're in these things. And if you don't know that, that's something you want to work on. My videos will help. There's plenty of other strong crypto analysts that can help. There's plenty of strong stock analysts that can help. My advice is to look through the BS and try and find people who are really taking more of a neutral stance or just being really honest about data rather than just hyping you saying, all right, look at this massive price target I'm going to lay out there, and trying to kind of create a frenzy. So look for those people who you can really trust. One for me is Benjamin Cohen. I think he's really great and a super helpful channel to watch if you haven't checked him out. And, just look at those fundamentals, feel really positive, and that'll help you to really have kind of that conviction you need on these strong down market days or weeks. And if if you were feeling really stressed this week, honestly, maybe it's time to do a little bit more of that fundamental work to really understand what you've been buying and why, market cycle theory, and what things are really looking at in the medium to long term, so that you can get out of your head and stop just watching the short term losses that you haven't actually taken, if you haven't sold. So that's my advice there. I think there's definitely a lot of room for us to not panic and to not go along with the over leveraged traders who are getting forced to sell, and to really maintain kind of that composure. And that, remember, is where you make money. These moments that are hard are where you make money. It's, anyone can buy when something's really green and get lucky and hold a little bit longer until it's more green and then sell. The real money is made when you have to go against the market for a short period of time. And that's kind of been us this week, at least been me this week. I'm holding a lot of these shares, and these shares have been going down aggressively, right? ET went down 35% this week. That's a strong move. And so for me, I'm, offsides the market in the short term, and that's okay. That's something that I recognize, and holding through that and feeling confident through that is really how I know I'm going to make money for the next year, rather than just following what everyone else is doing. I wish you luck out there in the markets. I will continue to provide analysis and those types of things. Let me know in the comments if you have anything specific you would like me to address, and really enjoy the holidays, enjoy your families. Don't stay glued to the screens, and focus on those fundamentals. All right. Have a wonderful evening. Cheers.